We present Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones, and Juno Alexander in just a minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And we welcome our four contestants back again. And once again, I'm going to ask them all to speak on some unlikely subject without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card which is in front of me. And once again, according to how well they do this and how often they're challenged, they will gain points or their opponents will gain points. And let us begin the show this week with Juno Alexander. Juno, the subject this week for you is hats. Can you talk to us for 60 seconds on hats, starting now?
These are probably the most useful of all apparel, as they can keep the ears warm, prevent the hair from getting tied together when traveling in an open car. They also prevent the water from trickling down the back of the neck, can save the head from being bashed when falling off horses or motor bicycles. Cowboys can use them for fetching water. I have used one once to put shopping in. They can be made of wool, cardboard, silk, feathers, flowers, hats, could be made of any material.
Kenneth Williams has challenged you.
Well, two can be made.
Yes, you have a repetition of made.
It can be made.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
So, Kenneth Williams, I agree with you. That was a correct challenge for repetition. So you take over the subject of hats, you gain a point for a correct challenge, and you have 24 seconds starting now.
Well, the smartest couturier I knew once said to this lady, have these knits, and she said, but I want a hat. He said, well, they will fly around you, and in such close formation that they will create the most beautiful toque you've ever seen. Oh, she said, but they're not very clean, are they, knits? And he said, no.
No, Clement Freud has challenged you first.
The double knit.
Oh.
Yes. You knitted your knits. Clement Freud, you have a point for a correct challenge, and you have 7 seconds for hats starting now.
With a crochet hook and a pound of wool, here's Charlie, your host, and I forget what he says after that.
The whistle, which is blown for us, as always, by Ian Messiter, the creator of the game, tells us that 60 seconds is up. And whoever is speaking at that moment gains the extra point. On this occasion, it was, once again, Clement Freud, and he has a lead at the end of that round. Kenneth Williams, will you begin this round? Cornucopia. Kenneth, can you talk to us on cornucopia for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, as far as I know, it's some sort of urn into which they stuff plenty of everything. You know, your grapes, your bananas, and your apples, and your oranges, your pears.
Juno Alexander's challenge you. Why?
Well, I thought there were an awful lot of yours, but then I suppose that's not it, is it?
Well, we don't really challenge.
No,
I know
we
you're new to
don't,
the game.
no.
You haven't played it as often as our three regular men, but we don't on such little words.
I will add
much.
1 point to his cornucopia.
Yes, other words, if we did, you know you challenge on every the and it and but,
Right.
and we would never get playing the game, would
No.
we? So, Kenneth, an incorrect challenge, so you gain a point for that, and you have 52 seconds for cornucopia starting now.
Well, the simile, of course, lies with series, and indeed Shakespeare likens it to cornucopia when he says, why, droops my lord, I overlap and corn bowing the head, add series plenteous load. And that, of course, is
Clement Freud has challenged you. Why?
Repetition of plenty.
Yes,
I
the
didn't.
one-
I said plenteous. You great fool. Why don't you listen? You see, he doesn't listen. The first time it was plenty, and the second time it was
Well, you-
plenteous load.
But I don't know what you said. I thought you said two plenties. I
No,
must
you're
say-
wrong, so I didn't.
Well, all right. We're going to take your word because you did go very fast, which is unusual for you. So you get a point, Kenneth, for an incorrect challenge, and you have 41 seconds for cornucopia starting now.
Well, the wagon was in the early morn, the wagon was in the Nile lounge above there, very quickly the ocean bridge sparks, well, that's where you can stuff it in.
Clement Freud has challenged you again.
Repetition.
What? Rubbish?
All the
Yes.
things I can do.
A repetition of what he said just before. Of what he said before, was it, Clement?
Yeah.
Definitely,
Yes.
all right. You get a point, and you have 35 seconds for cornucopia, Clement, starting now.
This is, in fact, a horn of plenty, as Kenneth Williams mentioned. Although he...
Kenneth Williams, why?
Well, if I've already mentioned it, he's repeating it.
in this game, he has repeated what you said.
Exactly, you're not allowed to be in this game! So shut it up!
You won? You hardly got through at the end of the first round. I don't forget what the challenge was now. Oh, yes, repetition. Now, he only repeated what you said, and in this game, it's only repetition if you repeat what you said yourself. So, Clement Freud did not repeat himself, so that sounds funny, doesn't it? He has 31 seconds, having gained a point for an incorrect challenge, to continue with cornucopia starting now.
It would be indescribably boring to detail that you dug in and pulled out your apples, your oranges, your bananas, and your pineapple.
Kenneth Williams, a challenge.
This is deviation, the digging in and pulling out pineapples. I mean, it's all so devious. I've never heard such rubbish. It has nothing to do with the cornucopia.
No, I don't think digging in and bringing out your apples and pineapples and pears and I don't think that's really got to do with cornucopia. No, I give you the point on this occasion, Kenneth, and tell you that you have 22 seconds for cornucopia starting now.
Well, as the poet said, we stand upon this distant shore with cornucopian dreams of yore, and nourishment in false supreme shall always give us this long dream, which all sustaining to... Who's challenged?
Peter Jones is challenged. Why?
Well, deviation.
Why?
Nothing to do with the cornucopia.
He said, he established that the poet has said on this cornucopian shore, is that right?
No, the cornucopian dream.
The cornucopian dream, and so he was
He's
going on
obviously not
about
familiar with
Well, a
the poet.
dream of a cornucopia isn't a cornucopia.
All right, what I will then let the audience be the final judge, because this is one of those difficult decisions.
You'll have to wake them up first.
He's dropped off.
They're coming up quite nicely. The fellow was asleep's come through. don't they?
Your people repeating everything.
No, I think the audience should be the final judge on this rather difficult decision of
How much
deviation.
longer is there of this one subject?
We've only got 5 seconds left. That's why I thought you came in.
I
So
see. Yes,
you
of
did that
course,
to get the
yes.
audience on your side, did you?
Well, I wanted them to know the situation. That's it.
You know the tenseness of the situation, and Peter Jones also wants you to know that he hasn't yet spoken and he hasn't yet scored. But be
And
fair,
I've got a
please.
wife and 3 children to support.
So, in spite of his wife and 3 children, will you please be fair? And if you agree with his challenge, will you cheer? And if you disagree, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? I think the cheers just had it, yes. So the boos are all saying, So, Peter Jones, you have a point for a correct challenge. You have 6 seconds on cornucopia starting now.
It's a grocer's shop in Dijon, in the heart of the mustard area, and I have been there.
Is that a bit of fantasy or is it true, Peter?
No, it's somewhere in France. I can't remember whether it's exactly in Dijon, but it's somewhere.
But you've seen a grocer's shop called cornucopia.
Yes, little supermarket.
Because it's
yes,
full
yes.
of good things, isn't it?
Anyway, Peter, you have now 2
That's the idea,
points,
is it? Yeah.
and you're creeping up on Clement Freud and Kenneth Williams, who are both equal in the lead at the end of that round. And Peter Jones, we would like you to begin the next round, and the subject, rather aptly, I think, is my favourite subject. Will you talk about that, my favourite subject, for 60 seconds, starting now?
My favourite subject would give opportunities to Kenneth Williams to quote at length from the poets and to give us an intellectual treat, picnic even, if we were allowed to listen to it long enough, and would also furnish Clement Freud with a chance of interpolating witticisms, jokes and amusing remarks, and would have also built into it the opportunity for me to actually score at the very last second of the 60 seconds. It would also be entertaining, would not involve any repetition on the part of any of the people participating in this witty game so brilliantly chaired by Nicholas Parsons, whom I have admired for so long. And it would have an opportunity for the lady guest.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of opportunity.
Yes, there were too many opportunities.
Well,
on your
yes.
side. Correct challenge for repetition of opportunity. There are 9 seconds left for you, Clement Freud, on my favourite subject, starting now.
My favorite subject is cornucopia. I would...
Juno Alexander's challenge.
Must be a deviation because his favourite subject and everybody's is Clement Freud.
I quite agree. I'm sure that that is a very unkind cut at Clement Freud, but the audience clapped, and so for a bad joke, we will give you a point, Juno, and say you have 5 seconds on my favourite subject, starting now.
My favourite subject is me. I am 46 years old, rather stupid, but very...
Peter Jones. Peter Jones' challenge, actually, before the buzzer, before the whistle, what was
I
it?
felt it was deviation because she's obviously not as old as that.
Ah.
And as she's already admitted that she was, she gets an extra point for a wrong challenge. So, and she has half a second for my favourite subject, Juno, starting now.
I am...
So, Juno,
I wouldn't have minded him winning it for being so gallant.
So, being so gallant, he puts him in 4th place behind you now, who are in 3rd place behind Kenneth Williams, who's in 2nd place behind Clement Freud. Clement, your turn to begin. And the subject, pie. What a delightful subject to talk about. Will you go on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
When I first came across this word, it was in an arithmetic class at school, and I was told that pi equaled 22/7. As I advanced along my path of education, it was explained that pi equals 3.142, and later still, when I started the culinary arts, somebody mentioned that butter, sugar, and flour with a modicum of mixture like... I meant moisture.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Thank you very much.
Kenneth, you have a correct challenge and a hesitation for a hesitation, and you take over the subject of pie, and there are 33 seconds left, starting now.
With the intention of having a blackberry one, I was picking these things in a hedgerow when a bloke said they're sprayed with insecticide, and if you eat them, you die. I thought, oh no, I dropped the lot. And I went over and never had none of this, but we bought instead a manufactured pie in a shop. Now, this was covered in wax and had on the outside gluconates are added. I phoned them up. I said, here, what are these? I've never heard of them. They said it's chemicals. I said, yes, all right, don't lie me with science.
You made your point so well. None of us want to buy any of those pies. We want to have our homemade pies. And Kenneth, you have leapt into the lead alongside Clement Freud. Juno Alexander, we're with you now. Would you start this? It's your turn to start, I should say. And the subject is driving a bargain. Would you talk to us about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
I do this daily. It is a bargain because my husband bought it for me, and when driving it, I recapture my youth because I keep the hood down, and as long as I wear dark glasses, scarf over my head, and keep my skirts short, I have a very merry time. Its clutch has burned out recently, but as long as you keep it filled with petrol and oil and the tires nicely plumped up, it will carry you through England, Scotland, Wales, France, Belgium, Holland...
Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
Deviation.
Why?
It's not amphibious.
But she never said that she crossed the water on it.
No.
She just said it would carry you through those
Carry
different
you through.
countries.
Once
And she
have
never
you got
said
there,
that she
that's
crossed... Just a minute, June, I'm on your
Sorry,
side, my
darling,
love. She never said that she crossed the channel to get to France. She just said it would carry across France. She's making a statement of fact. So it's an incorrect challenge, and she has another point, and there are 26 seconds left for Juno on driving a bargain, starting now.
Doing this has altered my entire life, having made me rather aggressive, but also it is...
Peter Jones is challenged. Why?
I don't think she's aggressive, and so it's a deviation.
When she plays Just a Minute, she's very aggressive.
Do you think so?
Yes.
Oh, I don't
have
think so.
to be,
I
said
didn't
the
think she
man
was
for
aggressive.
himself.
I thought she was, not aggressive, really, at all.
Well, I think she's aggressive, plays Just a Minute. In
all
fact,
right.
as Juno says, you have to be in this game, so it's an incorrect challenge.
I think you're a good deal more aggressive than you were when I started.
You're a good deal better at the game than when you started. And I have to say here, what sounds slightly unchivalrous to Juno, yes, you are aggressive, because it means she gets a point for an incorrect challenge and keeps the subject with 18 seconds left, starting now.
I take ladies in the car with me who are extremely brave in view of the way in which I conduct this vehicle on occasion, especially if I have not seen to its interior.
And Kenneth Williams got in first.
It was hesitation.
Yes, she teetered so close to it, and eventually she got the hesitation, but you got in first. And there are only 2 seconds left, Kenneth, for you on driving a bargain starting now.
I do it in the Arab countries. I always say half of what you say is what I'll give.
Once again, Kenneth Williams got 2 quick points, 1 for getting in before the whistle and 1 for speaking when the whistle went. So he's now taken the lead at the end of that round. And Kenneth Williams, it's your turn to begin. The subject, Benito Mussolini.
Oh, him.
So your reaction was delightful, but will you talk about him for 60 seconds starting now?
Well, in a political vacuum, such as we witnessed in Europe with the collapse of the Weimar Republic and these little centres of liberality, there did come into the picture these National Socialists, and the form it took in Germany was Nazism, and the form in Italy, of course.
Clement Freud challenged. Why?
Repetition.
Of what?
Form.
Yes, there were 2 forms, you see. Yes, the form in Germany, and you were going to give us the form in Italy, which was Benito Mussolini's form. There are 45 seconds left for you, Clement Freud, to continue on Benito Mussolini starting now.
It took in Italy was fascism in the person of Benito Mussolini. And the extraordinary thing about this was that during the war, there were 40 million Italian
Kenneth Williams got in first.
Great hesitation.
Yes, there was. He didn't want to speak fascist again, and he couldn't think of another word to replace it with, which he often manages to achieve. 33 seconds on Benito Mussolini now with you, Kenneth, starting now.
In the Foreign Office correspondence, there is the copy of the letter sent by Neville Chamberlain to this gentleman, and it does begin, Mio caro Benito, and it states that he has been offered the Order of the Bath, and he actually accepted it. Now, I know it may seem very odd that a fascist dictator out there in Rome should be getting this high order from England. After all, it's a sovereign...
Clement Freud challenge, why?
repetition of order.
Yes, he had the order more than once.
Well, they're more interested in this than they are.
You're absolutely right, Kenneth. They definitely are. We all are, but we still are primarily here to
That's
play
with the
just a
pair.
minute.
Kenny could talk and I would challenge.
Yes, so... all right, I'm going on. Clement has a point for a correct challenge, and he continues on Benito Mussolini for 8 seconds, starting now.
He was a small, plump man, immensely vain. He shaved twice a day and had a study which was 38 feet long.
Well, Benito Mussolini brought points to both Kenneth Williams and Clement Freud in that round, but Clement Freud was speaking when the whistle went, so he now has gone into the lead alongside Kenneth Williams. Clement Freud, your turn to begin. The subject, olives. Can you talk to us about olives for 60 seconds, starting now?
When Popeye, the cartoon character, had a lot of spinach and a surplus amount of energy, his creators, having no idea what else to do, invented for him a wife called Olive, and all that was hers became olives. It's also a vegetable grown particularly in the hot countries and comes either black or green and produces olive oil.
Peter Jones has challenged. Why?
It's not a vegetable.
Oh, no, it's a fruit, isn't it? From a tree. Yes,
It's
it must
from
be
a tree, yes. I don't think it's a vegetable.
No, I've always understood it to be a fruit. We'll probably get letters telling me whether I'm right or wrong. Peter Jones gets olives as a fruit, and 32 seconds left, starting now.
Olives are rounded, dark.
Kenneth Williams has challenged. Why?
Well, because this is a lot of rubbish. I mean, they're obviously not rounded. I mean, it's the only way anyone's got to look at an olive and they know they're not rounded. I mean, you see, it's just
They're
so
not
rubbishy,
square.
isn't it?
They're not angular, are they?
No, but you
olives
see,
angular?
they have the same shape as an egg, and you don't say that's rounded, you say it's egg-shaped. I mean, its shape is unique to itself.
So it's
Well, I
olive
didn't
shaped.
want to say olives are olive-shaped. That's boring. If you're talking about eggs, you're entitled to say eggs are egg-shaped, but I think that's a boring remark. Boring.
Kenneth! I think that Peter made a very good point. If you have eggs, you talk about them being egg-shaped. Olives are not round. He didn't say they were round. He said they were rounded, and their surfaces are rounded. Therefore, I think it's an incorrect challenge, and Peter has 27 seconds to continue with olives starting now.
And can be squeezed. And you can get olive oil from them, which mixed with egg yolk can make mayonnaise. You have to drip it very slowly in...
Clement Freud's challenge. Why?
Deviation.
Why?
You don't have to drip it, basically. It's an awful myth. It really
You
is.
don't have to drip it, no.
He said
this
you
is
have
the
to drip
point.
it.
I mean, there are many ways of
I
doing
didn't
it.
say you had to. I didn't say you had to make mayonnaise.
You did say to make
But if
mayonnaise.
you do make it, one way
No,
of doing
you know,
it
you
is
didn't-
by dripping it.
No, we've got to the stage, everybody's getting very tense about
I'm
accurate...
not tense. I'm as relaxed as I've ever been in my life.
So, in this state of tension, I've got to be very accurate in my decisions, and you did say that in making mayonnaise, you have to drip it. And on that basis, Clement challenged you, so I must uphold his challenge as being correct and give him a point and 15 seconds to continue with olives starting now.
In the Mediterranean countries, it would be virtually impossible to cook without olives because they, or the oil made from them, make their appearance in virtually every dish that you get.
Peter Jones's challenge.
He said virtually twice. Repetition.
Yes, he did.
Two people are awake.
All right, virtually was said twice, so Peter, you have a correct challenge of point and 5 seconds for olives starting now.
In the Mediterranean countries, it would be virtually impossible to cook without the use of olive oil.
I think Peter virtually made his point then about cooking with olive oil, and he gained some points and also won for speaking when the whistle went. He has now moved forward considerably. Fat heads! That is the subject on the card in front of me. And it's Juno Alexander's turn to begin, and will you talk to us about fatheads, Juno, for 60 seconds starting now?
These can be very delicious if made out of calves or sheep or pigs. They are difficult to acquire and must be cooked with extreme care, as the fat...
Kenneth Williams' challenge.
Hesitation.
I think I would agree with that hesitation. Fatheads dried her up, I'm afraid, and Kenneth, you get a point for a correct challenge. I must tell you now, and tell the audience and the listeners, that this will be the last round because we have no more time. And this particular moment, Kenneth has now moved into the lead alongside Clement Freud. He has the subject of fatheads. He has 44 seconds, and he starts now.
I understand this is a slang word, and of course refers to people who are imbecilic fools, and they say, oh, he's fathead, they know what he's talking about. And of course, some people might apply the term to me, because they do feel that often I don't really know what I'm discussing now. That is untrue. Of course, I'm always coherent people.
Clement Freud's challenge, why?
That's the third, of course. Repetition.
Yes, you did use, of course, rather a lot, and at this particular moment of the game, Kenneth has very generously given way on the subject of this small challenge and kissed Clement Freud to show there's no ill feeling at this moment, and so Clement has another point and 28 seconds for fatheads starting now.
One of my most embarrassing occasions was when I went to a dinner.
Kenneth Williams' challenge.
Deviation, we're not discussing his most embarrassing occasion.
But Kenneth, you can ill afford to challenge so rapidly because he might well say that one of his most embarrassing occasions was something to do with a fathead. And he didn't have a chance to establish that. So to be utterly fair, it's an incorrect challenge. He didn't get going, and he has 25 seconds on fatheads starting now.
And my hostess replied, that is my son. So I said it suits him. This would have been a much funnier story had I not been interrupted by Kenneth Williams. Fat heads on the part of animals are usually served in a vinaigrette or sauce verte, which consists of oil and vinegar, coming from olives, lemon juice, sorrel, watercress, hard-boiled egg, chive.
So, Clement Freud's knowledge of food and his ability to keep going in just a minute under all opposition gained him not only an extra point, but that extra one for speaking when the whistle went. So let me give you the final score. Juno Alexander finished in 4th place, only 1 point behind Peter Jones, who was a little way behind Kenneth Williams, who was in 2nd place, but he was definitely 3 points behind this week's winner, Clement Freud. We do hope you have enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute and enjoyed the game and, of course, the way that we play it. And from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Simon Brett.
We present Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Andre Mellet in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And once again, I'm going to ask our 4 intrepid exponents of the game to try and talk for just 1 minute, if they can, on some unlikely subjects that I will give them, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card which is in front of me. And according to how well they do this, how often they're challenged, they will gain points, or their opponents will. And let us begin the show this week with our many-time winner, Clement Freud. Clement, the subject we'd like you to start with is highways and byways. Can you talk to us on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
If you go into a saloon bar and purchase a large whiskey, a medium-sized brandy, a small gin, a modicum of beer, some ale, and other beverages of an intoxicating nature, and attempt thereafter to make your way home, you might well be called taking the highway, or, to put it another way, being drunk on the open road. This is an offence, especially if you're in charge of a pram, a donkey.
Kenneth Williams, the chap.
Deviation has nothing to do with highways and byways. It's about the licensing laws and people getting drunk.
I do believe there's no law which says that if you cannot be drunk in charge of a perambulator. Is there?
Yes, oddly enough, there is.
Oh, I'm delighted you told me. All right, then.
But would you want to go... My case comes up next week. I mean,
That would come under cruelty to children, surely.
no, you really can be charged with being drunk in charge of a perambulator.
What if you're drunk in charge of a drunken baby?
Yeah. But they have to ask
Anyway,
the
it's all
baby to burn it back
deviation.
as well.
My challenge is deviation.
What is it? Why?
Because it's nothing to do with highways and byways. It's discussing
Oh,
being
I think
drunk.
I was given the benefit of the doubt on this occasion, Kenneth. Say he has a point for an incorrect challenge and 30 seconds left for highways and byways, starting now.
The B469071 is probably the smallest byway any...
Kenneth Williams, the challenge.
Deviation isn't true.
Yes, there's no row with such a long number. You're quite right. So you have a point there for a correct challenge, and you have 22 seconds to continue, not continue, but to take over the subject of highways and byways, starting now.
There is a special road atlas which gives you details of all the highways and byways with emphasis on the minor, and you get these sylvan little lanes down which you can wander without any of the noise of the humdrum world to disturb your tranquil peace of mind. And
So, the whistle tells us, by the way, for those who don't know, that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Kenneth Williams, so at the end of the first round, he has 2 points, Clement Freud has 1, and the others have yet to speak. Andre Mellet, your turn to begin the next round. What the butler saw. Can you talk to us about what the butler saw for 60 seconds, starting now?
This really depended on where he was at the time. I came from Liverpool, and what the butler saw in Blackpool was a great deal spicier than what he perceived in New Brighton at the end of the pier. You used to put a penny in a small machine and press your eyes to binocular-type things and turn a handle. And then in front of you, a rather buxom lady got undressed.
Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
Deviation.
Why?
If you put a penny into a slot, you must, I mean, you don't normally see a buxom lady, surely.
If you
You see
turn a
an
handle...
engaged sign.
Well, obviously you put pennies into different kinds of slots to Andre, but if you put a penny in the sort of slot that she described and turn the handle, you're quite likely to see a buxom lady.
Really?
Yes.
She has drunk fully from the cup of life.
Yes. We didn't know that your education had been so neglected, Clement. You've been prompt about perambulators, but not about the butler. Anyway, an incorrect challenge, so Andre gets another first point, and there are 34 seconds for what the butler saw starting now.
Being about 7 at the time, I had to stand on tiptoe, and this aforesaid lady would get undressed.
Kenneth Williams will challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
I'm sorry, hesitation.
Yeah.
You're just in time, you know. Kenneth, you have a point for a correct challenge, and you have 26 seconds for what the butler saw starting now.
What the butler store had in it one memorable line, I am your superior in madness. Undress yourself immediately. And the girl said, I'm here to get the job as secretary. He said, yes, that's all part of our institutional therapy. Take down your clothes. Well, she was appalled, and that was one of the funniest scenes in the play. In fact, I said to these friends...
For some people who may be worried about some of the strange things that Kenneth was talking about then, there was a play in the West End of London once called What the Butler Saw, which Kenneth was describing very accurately. And Kenneth, at the end of the second round, you have now gone into a commanding lead over all
Very
the others.
proper, very right and very proper.
And Kenneth, your fan club's in as well, I'm delighted to say. Kenneth, will you begin the next round for us? Oh, a very good one for you. Whims and fancies. Would you talk to us about whims and fancies for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, I've had quite a few whims in my time, and there have been quite a few fancies. And one of them was for floss. It's vastly sort of murky, sugary stuff on the end of a stick, and I used to have this thing about it. I used to say, oh, I must have a bit of that. I couldn't stop myself if I saw it. You know, it's a terrible weakness of mine, and I don't laugh, it's wrong. He's just put his old buzzer down, so I know he's not even bothering to challenge me.
But Andre Mary has bothered to challenge.
Well, because I want to get a point to do, and he's deviating by talking about Clement Freud's buzzer
Yes,
instead of what he
on the other
fancies.
hand, one of his whims and fancies might be Clement Freud's buzzer,
He
mightn't
didn't
it?
say so.
But actually, you're quite right. He didn't establish that that was one of his whims and fancies, so I think it's a correct challenge, Andre. You have a point and 25 seconds on whims and fancies, starting now.
To follow them can be extremely dangerous because by its very implication it means that you have not given the matter sufficient thought, and it can land you into terrible trouble. You might wake up in the morning having followed a whim to find yourself...
Peter Jones is challenged.
A repetition of followed.
Yes, she followed once too often then, didn't she? Welcome to the game, Peter.
Thank you very much.
Not at all.
Very nice to see you.
Any other greetings before we go on?
No, I don't think so. No.
All right, Peter, whims and fancies is now with you, and you've gained your first point, and there are 10.5 seconds starting now.
A typical whim is the desire on the part of a pregnant woman to have black currant juice in the middle of the night or ham and eggs in the middle of the afternoon.
And Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of middle.
2 middles, I'm afraid, and Clement got in again before the whistle with 2 seconds on whims and fancies. Clement starting now.
Loganberries with whipped cream.
At the end of that round, Clement Freud has moved forward a little, and in fact, there's only 1 point separating all 4 of them in the end of that particular round. And Peter Jones, your turn to begin. And the subject is... Ian West is already laughing because he knows of it, because he thought it up. My doings. You think of some awful things, you know, Ian. You're ready to write. My doings is your subject, Peter, and you start now.
I don't like the way the audience laughed when you said that, however.
Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
Deviation.
Why?
Nothing to do with my doings.
Well, he did, because I said the subject. He didn't like the way the audience laughed when he said that, and what I said was my doing, so he's obviously on the subject, isn't he? I think so. And so you have 57 seconds, one of the earliest challenges we've had for a long time, on my doings, starting now.
Well, there are an awful lot of them. Some of them are in the bathroom. Murals, which I'm hoping someday, when I pass on, to donate to the Victorian Albert.
Andre Melly has challenged.
Hesitation before he donated them.
A very slight hesitation, but enough to give you the benefit of the doubt, Andre. A point to you. 47 seconds for my doings, starting now.
My doings are small and insignificant and of no interest to anyone at all except...
Kenneth Williams has
Well,
challenged.
deviation, they're no interest. Don't she wants you shut up. We don't want to hear about
I don't know why we have women on this.
I don't know either. We've never had women on this show. I don't know why they introduced them.
We've waited a long time for you to say about not having women on the programme, but...
Yes, I should say it more often. Yes, all right.
Anyway, I disagree with the challenge, and Andre has a point, and she keeps her doings. And there are 42 seconds with you, Andre, starting now.
My doings are of such enormous importance and significance that I'm delighted to be able to tell you about them. They are written in a large book. Daily,
Pause, Clement Freud.
Hesitation.
Hesitation. Clement, you take over my doings at 32 seconds, starting now.
When I step out of the bath, I'm privileged to have had the architects design a full-length mirror in which I regard myself. And the first thing that I see invariably are my doings. I also see a flannel, a towel, a brush, and a loofah with which I do the sort of things which you might well call...
Andre Melly has challenged.
2 witches in one sentence.
And I think you've saved him
I
from
thought so.
a witch worse than death, I think. All
Are
right.
you allowed?
A tough challenge, but in those circumstances, as you don't play the game as regularly as the 3 men, I will give you again the benefit, Andre, and 10 seconds for my doing starting now.
Oh, I didn't think I'd get it, Sat.
And so you... Clement Freud has rapidly got back again with another challenge, Clement.
Deviation. Had nothing to do with the subject.
Exactly, Clement. So there are 8 seconds on my doings, Clement, starting now.
Getting a saucepan in one hand and a lid in the other, one approaches a gas cooker and turns the flame to medium.
Why didn't one of you challenge them? You didn't fall in quick enough to challenge him, so he was speaking when the whistle went. He gains an extra point, and he has now taken the lead. He has a lead of 1 over Andre at the end of that round, who's 1 ahead of Kenneth, who is 2 ahead of Peter, and it is Clement's turn to begin, and a very long subject on the card, which makes my life very difficult. Clement, how to avoid an emotional crisis while selecting French pastry. Would you like me to repeat it? Good. That is a subject. You have 60 seconds starting now.
One of the great joys of receiving a subject like how to avoid an emotional crisis while selecting French...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation.
In the middle of his emotional crisis. He
Yes.
didn't want to repeat it. All right, a very doubtful one, but as it's a tough subject and a tough game, let's give it to you, Peter. And you have 53 seconds for how to avoid an emotional crisis while selecting French pastry, starting now.
Whoever chooses these subjects has obviously got a very strong pro-Freudian bias, because this subject takes about 12 seconds to say, and if you're allowed to repeat it 3 times, you've filled up half a minute before you've even said anything about the subject.
Andre Melly has challenged.
This is deviation. He's not talking about the subject, just about the game.
No, well, it's a very clever challenge, but I do think he's talking about the subject because he said how you had to say it 3 times, and you probably filled up half the game. No, he did say subject more than once, but you missed that
right.
one.
Repetition.
Too late. Peter has another point for an incorrect challenge. 37 seconds for how to avoid an emotional crisis while selecting French pastry, starting now.
Look carefully at the patisserie through the window of the shop. Scan the cream horns and puffs and Vienna slices which are there. If you can see through the flies and bead curtains that hang round the sides of the window.
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of window.
Yes, you've been through that window more than once. You gave us such a picture, such a filthy picture after the clean one, that we all paused. Clement, you have a correct challenge and 20 seconds for this subject, starting now.
Probably the best way of avoiding an emotional crisis, choosing French pastries, is choosing deliberately. taking your hand and grabbing a bath.
Yes, Clem.
To choosing.
It's not on the card, it's selecting.
Ah,
You see, this is why you didn't ask me to repeat it. So choosing
didn't repeat.
is a correct challenge because it's
Quite right.
you. For those, by the way, who don't know, you are allowed to repeat the subject on the card more than once, and so choose is not. So the 10 seconds for you now, Kenneth, on how to avoid an emotional crisis while selecting French pastry, starting now.
You do this by, first of all, having a cup of tea, 2 aspirins, and lying down. In this way, you are prepared for any kind of instability affecting your emotional stimulus.
Well, Kenneth Williams was then speaking when the whistle went. He has crept up a little. He's in second place behind Clement Freud. And again, 1 point separates all 4 of them in this order: Clement Freud, Kenneth Williams, Andre Mellet, and Peter Jones. Andre Mellet, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is putting a sock in it. Would you talk about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Putting a sock in it is one of those rather ungracious phrases which I feel must have originated in the United States. It does not seem to me part of our English language heritage. I suppose it means to shut your cake hole or belt up. It is something which you shouldn't say to anybody, however boring they are being, and I hope that nobody will... oh, Christ.
Kenneth Williams will come in first.
I'm afraid of hesitation.
I thought you were going to say, I'll put a sock in it, Andre. We shouldn't have women on the
I
program.
don't indulge in that kind of language.
I'm sorry. So it was hesitation. You have a point, Kenneth, and you have 35 seconds for putting a sock in it, starting now.
This all started, you see, with them stuffing the socks with these feathers and things and shoving them in people's mouths to prove troublesome and heckled at private meetings and public ones too. There was a terrible row about it, and they said, get these socks and stuff it with feathers, you see, and shove them.
Andre
I know
Mellet's
I've said it before. It's essential. They've got to understand what I'm talking about. Don't you challenge?
No, he didn't, so don't bang him. You do blow hot and cold on your friends, don't you? No, Andre challenge. Andre Mellet.
Repetition of feathers.
Yes, there was more than one lot of feathers there, so it was a repetition. 15 seconds for you, Andre, on putting a sock in it, starting now.
Now, a sock is a really useful object, sometimes woolly, occasionally made of nylon or other synthetic.
Kenneth Williams.
Deviation. Somebody's putting a sock in it, not discussing socks or what they're made of.
Yes, that's true, isn't it? Yes.
It's a slang expression, and we all know it is.
Yes.
It's nothing to do with the sock per se.
Yeah.
It's to do with shutting them up.
That's right. You made your point. You couldn't have made it better. I agree with you, Kenneth. You have a point and 8 seconds for putting a sock in it. What's the
It's
matter?
when people are going on and on and on, and you say, put a sock in it,
Lemon-
mate. Shut up. And that finishes them off.
Well, it hasn't finished off Clement Freud because he challenged, and then Andre, and then Peter Jones. What? But you got him first, Clement.
On and on
What?
and on.
On and on. You went on and on.
Oh, yeah.
And you went on and on from the very first. So Clement Freud has another point and the subject, and there are 7 seconds starting now.
When you get a speaker who continues onwards and possibly upwards, and you wish to stop his...
Andre Mellet has challenged. Why?
How can you continue to speak upwards?
You continues on.
In either
Speaking
volume.
upwards.
Yes.
You
Well, I
see,
suppose to
actually,
the
no.
gallery, you know. Hello up there, how are you? Hello. All that.
Well, I
You never heard anyone say speak up.
but not
but shut up
I'll
onwards
speak
and
upwards. A tough challenge, but enough to give you the benefit of the doubt, Andre. You have the subject 2 seconds on putting a sock in it, starting now.
If something's leaking, a sock.
So, a very interesting situation has developed at the end of that round. Andre got the extra point for speaking when the whistle went, and the end of that round, Andre Mellet, Clement Freud, and Kenneth Williams are all equal together in the lead ahead of Peter Jones. Peter Jones, we're with you again. The heebie-jeebies. Can you talk to us about the heebie-jeebies for 60 seconds starting now?
It was a small pop group in the late 50s. They toured the northeast of England, round about Tyneside, didn't ever achieve anything in the hit parade and never got on television. The phrase itself, of course, was born in New Orleans at the turn of the century when jazz first became popular, taken over from the funeral dirges of the residents who played often on musical instruments which they had kept from the American Civil War. and they were given this phrase, the heebie-jeebies, when they got particularly nervous or depressed, when they were emotionally...
Andre Melly has challenged.
A repetition of 2 when they was.
I know, what a rotten
What a
challenge.
rotten...
Enjoying it so... There's your booing brigade are in there. But of course, if you do challenge on those small things, which we do restrain ourselves from on theys and weres and ifs and buts and ands, Andre, it is a correct challenge, so I must be accurate in the game, give you a point, and the subject, the heebie-jeebies, and 18 seconds starting now.
When you have an unpopular decision made against you, it is inclined to give you the heebie-jeebies. This means you become nervous.
Peter Jones has challenged. Why?
I don't think that's true. I don't think one gets the heebie-jeebies under those circumstances at all.
What would you get, Peter?
The Jim Jams.
Looking at Andre, I would say she definitely had a dose of the heebie-jeebies at that particular moment. She had heebie-jeebies written right over her, so she has a point there. I must agree with that. And 10.5 seconds on heebie-jeebies, Andre, starting now.
Actually, this was a small Indian cricket team which came from a village.
Kenneth Williams has challenged. Why?
If it was a small Indian cricket team, how did she come out in him just now?
Because as you know very well, the subject on the card can mean more than one thing or be more than one thing. So an incorrect challenge, alas, and Andre has another point and 5 seconds for the heebie-jeebies starting now.
The small hamlet was called the Hibejibi, and that's where the team came from. I know this because...
Why, Clement?
Repetition of team.
Right, so Clement has another point for a correct half. 1/50 second. Yes, try getting him on deviation now. He's got half a second for the heebie-jeebies starting now. Actually, Andre did manage to challenge before the whistle went. What was your challenge, incidentally?
Hesitation.
Should we give Andre a point for a good try? No. Oh, the audience thing. Anyway, Clement Freud got the whistle for when the point went, the point for when the whistle went. And I'm getting confused. And the subject is now with you, Clement Freud, and it is the in thing. Can you talk about the in thing for 60 seconds starting now?
When you make a statement and mention in this...
Kenneth Williams has challenged. Why?
Hesitation.
I think there was a hesitation. It was a bit tough to challenge quite so soon, isn't it?
Well, I was getting terribly bored. I'm sitting here, fed up, cold, my feet ache terrible, and I've got a bunion and the leather's pressing on it. Rotten.
All right, as the score tells me that Clement has got a very definite lead.
Yes, he has. That's the point, you see. He's creeping up on us.
And I gave the benefit of the doubt to
Yes,
Clement last
that's
time.
right,
I will
yes.
let you have the benefit of the doubt over a tough challenge. I make
That's right.
quite clear, but you have 56 seconds on the in thing starting now.
The in thing, very obviously, is the thing that isn't out. And obviously, you see...
Clement Freud has challenged you.
Oh,
Why?
what happened?
Repetition of obviously.
Oh.
Yes, exactly. So Clement very rapidly gets another point and back in with the subject, and there are 47 seconds on the in thing, Clement, starting now.
I think in this game you can verily say that Peter Jones is the in thing. You only have to look at the audience, and each time my colleague in the grey suit opens his mouth, there is a hush of sympathy. And when he repeats himself, when he hesitates or when he deviates, there is a feeling of such empathy from all the people gathered together in this hall that one hesitates to press a buzzer or in any other way.
Peter Jones has challenged.
I'd like to give it to him.
hesitate.
You don't have to give it to him. You said hesitate twice, and he got you on it, legitimately.
One was hesitation, one was hesitates.
Would you like to give it to him? Well
yes,
done,
I'd like
yes,
to.
Yes. So Peter Jones has not only the sympathy audience, but also Clement Freud. Peter, you have another point and 23 seconds for the in thing starting now.
Well, you said the other week that we were allowed to repeat what the other person had said. So if I say that the thing that is in...
Kenneth Williams, a challenge.
Deviation. What was said last week's nothing to do with this week. It's ludicrous if we're going to go backwards all the time about last week. Where are you doing it now, dear? You've got to say about now. It's no good. I could go on about last week.
You go on all the time, Kenneth. And you've gone on quite long enough, because he was probably going to say, I said something last week which was the in thing or something like that. So he hadn't really got going. No, an incorrect challenge. Peter has a point, and he has 15 seconds on the in thing starting now.
I was going to repeat one of his most brilliant witticisms, and now I'm not going to. Just
Deviation. I've never made a brilliant witticism.
How do you know?
Thank you, darling.
How do you know he was referring to you?
What?
I knew it wasn't your own original witticism, but you said it quite nicely.
And so we had an incorrect challenge into the bargain, and Peter has another point and 10 seconds for the in thing starting now.
If you have an office and 2 or 3 trays marked in and out, and you can't think of the word tray, which I think
you can't think of the word. You thought of it and said it, you idiots. Yes. But Andre Melli got in first.
Repetition.
A repetition, yes. So 3 seconds for the in thing, Andre, starting now.
It is a small nightclub in East Cheam. You go downstairs.
Well, I'm afraid I've been told we have no more time this week to play Just a Minute, so all I can do now is give you the final score at the end of this particular edition of the game. A very interesting scoring, a very fair one. Peter Jones was in 4th place, but only, it wasn't a bad 4th. They've been making a lot of jokes and cracks about you, Peter, but you got a lot of points. You got 7 points, did very well. You were only a little way behind Kenneth Williams, who spoke up much more than you did, and he was in 3rd place. Andre Melli was in a very good 3rd place, but she was 1 point behind this week's winner, Clement Freud. We do hope that you have enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Simon Brett. We present Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Andre Melli in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And once again, we have 4 brilliant players of the game who are going to speak, if they can, for just 1 minute on some unlikely subject that I will give them, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card, which is in front of me. And once again, according to how well they do this, and how often they may be challenged by their opponents, they will gain points, or their opponents will gain points. This is the way we play, and we're going to begin the show this week with Peter Jones. Peter, the Abdabs. Can you talk on the Abdabs, Peter, for 60 seconds, starting now?
The Abdabs, particularly the screaming variety, are associated, in my mind, with too much to drink. And I believe alcohol can cause this state of mind, which is not exactly as bad as the, forgotten name.
Andre Melli, challenge you first.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, indeed, Andre. So you have a correct challenge. You gain a point for that. You take over the subject. You have 41 seconds for the Abdabs, starting now.
As bad as the heebie-jeebies. I think the Abdabs originated in Ethiopia. It was a particularly nasty disease, a little like malaria, and the symptoms something like epileptic fit. The patient,
Kenneth Williams' challenge.
Hesitation and deviation.
Which one do you want to...
Well, there was an error after hesitation.
Hesitation, yes.
And deviation. There's
Yes,
such
but it
disease
could
as
be a
Abdabs.
fantasy
All the
idea
rubbish,
that...
talking absolute muck.
Kenneth, I agree with the hesitation, definitely. You have a point for a correct challenge, and you take over the subject of the Abdabs, and there are 25 seconds left, starting now.
This is, of course, one of those slang corruptions which has no place in proper conversation. That is to say, the talk that goes on between people who we would call cultivated and mature. I would never use this kind of expression, but there are idiots about who say, oh, she had the screaming Abdabs, dear. I had to get the doctor round and gave her the sal volatile. She was lying on the floor, wrenching the place.
So, the whistle tells us, by the way, for those who don't know, that 60 seconds is up. Kenneth was speaking then when the whistle went, so he gained an extra point for doing so, and he has a lead over everybody else at the end of that round. And Clement Freud, it's your turn to begin. The subject is notwithstanding. 60 seconds starting now.
Notwithstanding is a sort of useless word like hereunto, heretofore, not but what, which is written as if it were one when in fact it is two or three collections of letters making a, what you might call...
Peter Jones, a challenge.
Hesitation.
Undoubtedly, yes.
Oh.
And you have a point, Peter, and you have 41 seconds for notwithstanding, starting now.
As he says, it is a quite meaningless phrase that's been joined up.
Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
Deviation is not a phrase, it's a word.
Yes, I think that is...
Joined up into a word.
You can't...
That's what I said. I did it joined up into a word.
Oh, yes, you might have been saying it, but you didn't actually.
Well,
did you?
he interrupted before I said it.
All right.
He anticipated that I was going to say it.
Peter Jones, they're on your side. Notwithstanding is still with you for 36 seconds, starting now.
So when my old aunt complained of these bunions having come from the chiropodist, and I said, you poor old soul, what have you been doing? She said it wasn't from sitting, it was notwithstanding either. I have been running up and down the stairs and in the garden, where they have a lot of very steep steps, which cause her a lot of inconvenience.
Kenneth Williams, the challenge.
Deviation. He says she got bugs from the chiropodist, and then that she
Bunions
ran
from the
up...
chiropodist, yes.
What?
I thought you'd take your bunions to the chiropodist,
He
not go
said
there to get
bugs. He never said
No, he
nothing
said
about
bunions.
bunions.
He said bunions.
Yes.
Well, your diction's worse than mine, mate.
Well, that's a terrible thing to say about anybody.
And to use a phrase we've heard you use before now, Kenneth, get your ears cleaned out. Notwithstanding. That is still the subject, and it is still with Peter Jones. He's gained another point. He has 12 seconds, starting now.
And my uncle was very sympathetic when she came in from...
Clement Freud's challenge, why?
Deviation?
Why?
An uncle can't be a she. Or
He
possibly...
already has established his aunt had the bunions, and his aunt was notwithstanding had bunions.
You know very well I don't have to talk about the same person I was talking about it before I
And
was
so it
interrupted.
said, when his, it was quite clear to me, Clement, so he said his uncle, when she came in, he referred to the
Before
aunt.
you made a challenge which failed, I was talking about the aunt. And now I'm talking about her husband. Because
Right. I
they may
quite
be
agree.
listening and he'll be upset if I neglect any reference to him, you
He'd
know.
be more upset if you called him she.
He didn't call him she, he made it quite clear to me anyway. So, Peter, you have another point, and you have 7 seconds, notwithstanding, starting now.
Lie down, he said, in the sitting room. It's notwithstanding that has caused this dreadful affray, because there were a lot of...
To enjoy that last subject so much, he could hardly blow his whistle, and he swallowed it. But he did manage to make a little noise, and whoever was speaking, of course, when the whistle goes, gets the extra point. It was, on this occasion, Peter Jones. And the end of that round, he has a commanding lead of 3 over everybody else in the show. Anyway, Andre Miller, your turn to begin. It's a marvellous subject that Ian's thought of for you. Mud wrestling, starting now.
You might think that I would know extremely little about this subject, and you would be absolutely right. I suppose it means wrestling in the mud. Something like the wall game, which I believe they play at Eton, that well-known public school. 2 men, stripped to the waist perhaps, get together and see which can get the other one down into the mud. Maybe.
Kenneth Williams got him first.
Hesitation.
I indeed agree, Kenneth. You have a point, you have mud wrestling, and you have 34 seconds starting now.
The idea of this game is to make your opponent look
look as ill at ease as possible. And, of course, the fact that you are in this disgusting substance does add enormously to one's potential in these kind of circumstances. After all, it stands to reason if you're in a load of mud, you're not going to look...
Peter Jones's challenge, why?
I can't hear. Can't hear.
I can't hear either, so what's your challenge? I'll probably give it to you.
A foul. I think it was a foul.
Well, you've got to give me one or the other. What was it?
Hesitation covered up by the foul and inaudible.
Well, if I couldn't hear him, it must have been hesitation, because he obviously never said anything, did he? We couldn't hear you, I'm afraid, Kenneth, so I must give the benefit of the doubt to Peter on this occasion and say he has 14 seconds for mud wrestling starting now.
When the talkies came in the 30s in America, the entrepreneurs there, in a desperate effort to attract audiences, put on this disgusting sport of mud wrestling. They sometimes employed women.
I wondered when we were going to get to women in mud wrestling, because I thought that was one of the chief attractions of the sport. Peter Jones was speaking then when the whistle went. And so he gained an extra point as he increased his lead at the end of that round. And there's a little joke going on the other side of the room, which I can't make out. Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin. One of these lovely literary historical subjects for you, Dr. Johnson. Can you tell us something about Dr. Johnson in 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, it is recorded that he once said, any man abed before midnight is a scoundrel. I don't know that we'd all concur with that, but a charming anecdote is told. When he took oars from the Temple stairs to Greenwich, Boswell asked, do you believe in universal education? Would this boy row us any better if he had knowledge? And Johnson leant forward and said, boatman, what would you give to know about the Argonauts? The boy rested on his oars and said, why, I would give what I have.
Clement Freud challenged you.
Repetition of oars.
Yes, you had those oars, but the...
Well, it was very beautiful because the boy said, I will give what I have. And he never replied, the doctor, to that, but he did give him double fare. Boswell noticed that.
One for each
and
oar.
So he thought that was rather a beautiful gesture from a very beautiful man. It was a very charitable, kind, lovely man. No, don't bother, don't bother.
No, we enjoy being informed, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners do, but Clement Freud had a correct challenge for repetition of oars, and there are 24 seconds left for Dr. Johnson with you, Clement, starting now.
When Stanley cut his way into the center of Africa and came into a clearing in the jungle and mentioned those famous words, Dr. Livingstone.
You challenged too soon, did you, Kenneth?
No, I didn't challenge to his deviation.
Why?
It was to do with Dr. Johnson.
This
We're all about Africa and Dr. Livingstone, I presume. It's nothing to do with that.
Yes, he had been going sufficiently long time without introducing Dr. Johnson.
It's ludicrous. I mean, it just will not hold water. It just will not hold up, you see.
Well, he was...
So, Kenneth, you have another point, and you have 14 seconds for Dr. Johnson, starting now.
Well, of course, another famous thing that is associated with it is the first English dictionary.
Andre Mellet challenge, why?
Peter Jones can't hear what he's saying.
Had he started?
So what is the challenge, Andre?
Sort of just palliness over here, you know.
Well, if you give a wrong challenge, all that happens, I'm afraid, is the person speaking gets a...
Well, he might
another
speak
point.
clearer, you see.
Well, I couldn't hear, but I'm getting rather used to it
Well,
now.
this
I'm trying to lip read as I watch.
Well, on this
Very
occasion,
mobile
I
mouth.
definitely heard, and I think everybody heard, I know the listeners heard. So, Kenneth, you have another point, and you continue with Dr. Johnson, and 10 seconds left, starting now.
Mrs. Thrale once remonstrated with him. She is a good Methodist girl, Doctor. And he replied, the Church of England is good enough for me, and it certainly should.
Peter Jones challenged you.
Repetition of good. He said good. At least
Methodist
twice.
girl. Yes, that's right. Yes, she got in very cleverly with half a second to go. Ian Mester tells me it's 1/5 of a second to go. And Dr. Johnson starting now.
Boswell.
At the end of that round, Peter Jones has increased his lead. Kenneth Williams is in a very strong second place. Clement Freud and Andre Mellet are both trailing more than somewhat. Peter Jones, it's your turn to begin.
Right.
The subject, which sounds very bizarre to me, but perhaps you can talk about it if you can, kippers as pets. Will you talk on kippers as pets, Peter, for 60 seconds starting now?
I don't know what kinky mind invents these subjects for me, but in the Isle of Man and Yarmouth and Lowestoft, they cure the herring. And these fish are then sent to the various centres, the wholesalers, where they are sold. And I'm hesitating occasionally because I'm hoping someone's going to interrupt. However, if I'm allowed to expand on this subject and hesitate, I shall adopt a quite different style. Because, of course, pets of any kind are a matter of taste. Now, I prefer them when they're alive. But if they're dead, well, one can't really make a... It's... They just didn't want to take the subject from me. That's what it was. They were afraid of it.
Peter Jones was not speaking then when the whistle went, but gained an extra point for doing so. He had the subject to start with and kept going.
Well, that's a very nice way
with
of
the
putting
help of the deviation and the hesitation of all the others until the end for 60 seconds. He didn't say very much. And but he got 2 points on that particular round, and he increased his lead at the end of that round. Obviously, the others didn't want to take the subject, and they resisted the temptation. And all right, Clement Freud, here's one for you, and a very good answer that Ian's thought of: bloaters as enemies. Clement Freud, will you go on bloaters as enemies for 60 seconds, starting now?
It's very much easier to have a bloater as an enemy than to have a kipper as a friend, because as you probably know, the former is a herring which is put into brine and then smoked in its split state, whereas a bloater is a whole herring which is cured raw and doesn't have the bones.
Peter Jones is challenged. Why?
Hesitation.
Yes, indeed. He didn't have to challenge you for hesitation on your kippers.
Well, I know, but he seemed to be floundering, and I thought... I thought he might appreciate being interrupted. I would have appreciated being interrupted, really, when I was stuck with kippers.
And after all, I quite agree. Just because you're in the lead, why should you give any quarter? The others don't do it when they're in the lead, do they, Peter? Only when they're losing. All right, you have another point, Peter, and you have 39 seconds for bloaters as enemies starting now.
He hesitated when he said raw, because I think what he meant was the insides are left in for bloaters, and they're cured complete.
Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
Deviation, they're not. Only the rows are left in, the insides are taken out.
The insides are not left in at all?
No, only the row. Not
All
the-
right,
not-
Clement, you have a point, and you have 31 seconds for bloaters as enemies starting now.
Bloaters become very fierce enemies after a few days because of the pungency of their smell. A bloater ideally should be eaten in Great Yarmouth, which is where they come from, and after a number of days, let alone nights and weeks, the smell is so unpleasant.
Someone challenged Andre Melly, was it you?
Repetition of days.
Days and nights, yes. So, Andre, correct challenge to you, and you have the subject 14 seconds, bloaters as enemies starting now.
They are particular enemies of mine because they are so extremely indigestible. And when I eat them, I'm not allowed to forget the fact for several days afterwards. They are something that you have to have a particularly strong stomach for.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Particularly twice.
Yes, particular is a long word, and you don't want to use it twice. And Clement, you got in very cleverly with 1 second to go. Bloaters as enemies starting now.
Bloaters as enemies.
Clement Freud was then speaking when the whistle went. He gained the extra point. He's creeping up on Kenneth Williams, which is a very devious thing to do. Kenneth's 1 point ahead, but they're both, in fact, they're all trailing more than somewhat behind Peter Jones, who's a commanding lead in this game. Andre Melly, your turn to begin. The subject, When I Was 7. Can you tell us about that in 60 seconds starting now?
I was evacuated to North Wales to relations who didn't particularly want to have me but preferred me to evacuees. We went to school, which was a boarding variety, and was one of the day girls, only being 6 of them, which, as anybody knows, is something very unpleasant. You're somehow out of the whole thing. Nobody wants to know you. I had an enemy called Eve Lovett who had red hair and used to make me pinch food and take it to her at the said establishment the next morning, as she said she was always hungry and didn't have enough to eat. I was extremely frightened of this girl, and I've had an aversion for red, freckly faces ever since. She made me hang upside down from a tree by my knees, and would then hide my Wellington boots, so when my uncle came to collect us to take us home, I had no shoes. This is a kind of torture.
Andre said this is the kind of torture she did. Well, she had another kind of torture tonight. The 3 men let her go on. Anyway, we now know why Andre Melly is such a fine actress. Look what she's suffered. It's all come out in some of her brilliant dramatic performances, and she's moved forward into 3rd place alongside Clement Freud at the end of that round. There's still 1 point behind Kenneth Williams, who's still no less than 7 points behind our leader, who's still Peter Jones. And Kenneth, your turn to begin. A subject dear to your heart: sympathy. Would you talk about sympathy for 60 seconds starting now?
Yes, it of course refers to the root which is pathos and means suffering, comes to us from the Greek. Now, ladies who pick those leaves which are later made into tea have become synonymous with it. How often have we heard this beverage mentioned in conjunction with sympathy? Come round for a cuppa and get a bit of sympathy. How delightful this is. Man is the time
Clement Freud has... Clement has.
What for?
Hesitation.
Hesitation? Hesitation? No, not on your Nelly, you great fool. Hesitation. It's ludicrous.
Well, it's pretty ludicrous how slowly you can go without hesitating and still keep going.
To hesitate is visibly to pause.
Yes, and there's
if
another...
you are speaking in a measured fashion, can no more be called hesitating
It can't-
than
it can't-
fly to the moon.
But it cannot be called hesitation, but there must be a limit to which you can measure out your
No,
words
there's
and not...
none. This game doesn't say anything about limitations.
All right,
on
the game
syllables.
doesn't say anything, but I have to make decisions in this particular game. But on this occasion, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But if you go any slower, I will give it against you. You have a point. You have 29 seconds on sympathy, Kenneth, starting now.
We should pour it out, one to another, and in
Clement Freud has challenged you.
I
Why?
think that was fractionally slower than before.
No. Actually, I thought it was fractionally faster.
I haven't got my meter out on it.
Yeah. Well, my sort of inbuilt...
I'd like him to have another point.
I was so pleased to be able to hear it distinctly that I didn't mind it being rather hesitant.
He's going to have another point, and 20 seconds to continue with sympathy, starting now.
It is the inexpressible comfort of feeling safe with a person having denied many thoughts and measured words, but pour it all out, chaff and grain together, knowing that a faithful hand will take and sift those thoughts, keep what is worth keeping, and with a breath of kindness, blow the rest away. Into...
Peter Jones is challenged.
Repetition of spectrum.
For those in the audience who've missed the joke, because you may not have heard what Kenneth said, he didn't say spectrum, but Peter decided it was as good a word as any that he might have repeated. So he was challenged. Actually, if you'd had him for hesitation, I would have given it to you then. But he didn't repeat spectrum. I could just hear what he said. I gave you the benefit of the doubt last time, but not this time, Peter. Kenneth gets another point and has 4 seconds on sympathy, starting now.
The sympathy we all need for a specially discarded love, like an old glove thrown away.
So, sympathy gave Kenneth a lot of points, including 1 for speaking when the whistle went. He has moved forward with great speed and with a great number of points, and he's now 3 behind our leader, Peter Jones. And Peter, it's your turn to begin. The subject is riddles. Would you talk on riddles for 60 seconds, starting now?
I'm not going to talk in them, though that is sometimes done, but I often hear them at home. My children tell me riddles, like when they were very young, one was, why does a chicken cross the road? I don't know what the answer to that was. I think it was so that it can get to the other side. And similarly, what is red and white and black all over? And the answer is a colored newspaper. I'm not absolutely certain of that, but I think I'm right in saying so.
Andre Melly has challenged.
A repetition of Norton, I think, and...
Yes, I think you were right in more than once there, yes. Andre, I agree with the challenge. It was very repetitious, very boring too. And Andre has another point at this moment for a correct challenge, and she has riddles in 28 seconds starting now.
One of the places you find these boring little sayings are in those crackers which we have at Christmas time. You either pull them and make a nasty bang and then open out a little bit of paper which says something like Peter Jones has just told us.
Kenneth Williams has challenged. Why?
It doesn't say something like Peter Jones has just
I
told
quite agree. I've never opened a cracker which said Peter Jones has just told us.
Right.
So...
The chicken crossed the road.
Yes, why did the chicken that?
Yeah,
what it
but the way you put it this time made it sound as if Peter Jones was part of the riddle. Kenneth, you have a point for a correct challenge and 12 seconds on riddles starting now.
Why is getting up in the morning like a pig's tail twirly is a typical example, of course, because the inference there is too early has been so entwined to make it sound like a pig's tail.
I've just been told that I'm afraid we have no more time to play Just a Minute this week. So now let me give you the final score at the end of that round. A very interesting result, because once, and I can't remember when it's happened before, Clement Freud was in 4th place. We know that when he puts his mind to it, he usually can beat the others, but he was trying, but he was beaten well by Andre, who was in 3rd place, very well by Kenneth, who was only just in 2nd place. He came with a rush at the end, but his rush was not enough. Shut up. Wait for it.
Wait for it.
His rush was not enough to overtake this week's winner, Peter Jones. Well, a well-deserved win, and obviously, from my audience reaction, a very popular win. I'm sorry that we have no more time to play Just a Minute, because we enjoy playing the game. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Simon Brett.
We present Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones, and Andre Melly in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute, the game in which verbal dexterity is only exceeded by verbal ingenuity. And it's my pleasure to welcome these 4 gay exponents of the game and ask them to speak, if they can, for just 1 minute on some unlikely subject without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card. And according to how well they do it, they will gain points, or their opponents will. And if there's anything that sounds a bit different, it's because my voice has gone down 3 octaves due to a cold. Let us start with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, the question for you to start with is, my socks. We've often seen them on show in this programme, but will you now please talk about them for 60 seconds, starting now?
It is opportune that the subject has been, so to speak, handed to me on a plate, because I happen today to be wearing 2 pairs of socks. One composed of nylon, and the other, my haberdasher assures me, a mixture of orlon and pure wool for which the advertisements tell us there is no reliable substitute. I believe that thermal heat generated by this substance has no equal in any part of the world. English, of course.
Peter Jones has challenged you.
A repetition of equal. He
What's
said
that?
it's no equal, and he also said that made of equal parts of
Yes, he did
nylon
indeed.
wool.
That's very clever, yes. I must say that when he started off and said about his socks being on a plate, I thought that was very devious, but here we go. But it still kept going for 40 seconds. Peter, I agree with your challenge, so as is the correct one, you gain a point, and you take the subject of my socks. 19 seconds left, starting now.
Mine are all dark blue. I have, I suppose, upwards of a dozen pairs, but they aren't very often worn together, because I favour...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
If they're all dark blue, they've got to be worn together.
Yes, there's a subtle difference there. He probably puts them in the drawer in pairs and says, I'll take one from that pair and one from that pair. But I think logically your challenge is correct, Clement, so I award a point to you and the subject, and there are 9 seconds left, starting now.
On the outskirts of the city of Mysore, there's a village called My Socks, on which Indian washerwomen...
Did Kenneth's challenge come before the whistle?
No.
It didn't. It came a fraction too late, Kenneth, your challenge. So Clement Freud was speaking then when the whistle went, and whoever speaks when the whistle goes, which tells us, by the way, that 60 seconds is up, gains an extra point. It was on this occasion Clement Freud, so he has 2 at the end of that round. Peter has 1. Andre Melly and Kenneth have yet to score. And Peter Jones, your turn to begin. The subject is puns. 60 seconds, starting now.
Not really my favourite kind of humour. I always feel that they are substitutes for wit and jokes. If you can't be funny, be punny, one might say. There are a number of very well-known ones. There's a joke going the rounds about...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Yes, he said joke twice.
Yes, I'm afraid you did, Peter. You repeated the word joke. 2 people challenged. The one who presses first eliminates the other 2. It was Kenneth Williams. Another point to you, Kenneth. Not another point, your first point, Kenneth. And you have 43 seconds for puns, starting now.
Charles Lamb, the great essayist, quotes one of the most beautiful examples when he says that an undergraduate approaching a gamekeeper said of the rabbit in his hand, "Is that your own hair or is it a wig?" Now that, I think, is a very fine example of this. Disagreeing with my colleague there, I think they can be very witty indeed. And I have made several puns and been commended. Mr. Ree, the brother of Sigmund, was approached at a UNESCO conference by a lady who said, "Ah, sweet mystery of life, at last I found it." Really?
Well,
I hope
Kenneth,
they heard that, because he blew the whistle right in the middle of my joke. He ought to have more sense, that fellow.
for the sake of this
Fancy
audience...
blowing off like that in the middle of your joke. I've heard of letting off steam, but there are certain occasions when you would feel...
Yeah, no,
is that-
Ian Mester once nearly swallowed his whistle in the middle of a thing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you want to finish the joke for the sake of the
No,
audience?
I won't bother.
All right, then. Anyway, Kenneth Williams is speaking on puns when the whistle went. He gained the extra point for that. And the end of that round, he is in a commanding lead alongside Clement Freud and 1 ahead of the others. Clement Freud, your turn to begin. The subject is quail. Can you tell us something about it in 60 seconds, starting now?
Quail is a small game bird, delicate to eat and much prized gastronomically. They were caught, all quails, Sorry.
Andre Melly challenge first.
Hesitation.
Yes, you got him first with the hesitation,
teeth.
and you gain a point, Andre. And we're going to hear from you the first time. 47 seconds to go, starting now.
They are caught in rather nasty little traps and kept in special
Clement
cages.
Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
They're not caught in traps.
Well,
they
I wouldn't
are
have thought
caught
so.
in nets.
Yes, birds is rather difficult. I think that's a right challenge, Clement. You have a point, and you have 42 seconds on quails, starting now.
There are parts of the world in which animals lie on their backs attempting to trip up quails, but this was so sensationally unsuccessful. There are now many quail farms in this country where they're reared in captivity, and unfortunately the taste of the, as it were, factory bird is very inferior to those which were wild, caught in nets, which I haven't said before, only I use the word in a challenge on Andre Melly's absurd.
Andre Melly is challenged.
Deviation. He's talking about challenging me and not
Yes,
about
I
quails.
quite agree, Andre. A very good challenge. He's left the subject of quails and got on to challenging you, so you get the subject back, and there are 12 seconds for you on quails starting now.
They are kept in these special cages for 6.5 weeks.
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
She already said they were kept, and now she's saying she's kept again. So it's in the same round she said kept twice, so she's
Yes.
repetition.
I agree, Kenneth. Don't say it as if you think I'm never going to agree with you. That's right. 9 seconds for you on quails, Kenneth, starting now.
There is another kind of quail, and that is when people are appalled at something and you say they visibly quailed as they heard this appalling announcement, you see. I've won. You lead.
Once again, Kenneth Williams is speaking when the whistle went, which gives him in a bigger lead. He has now 4 points. And Andre Melly, it is your turn to begin. The subject is the greatest invention of our age. That timing in the audience was worthy of a professional man. Can you do it every time I give them the subject? And Andre, you've now had a moment to think. And would you tell us what you think is the greatest invention of our age in 60 seconds starting now?
In this scientific age in which we live, it is extremely difficult to select the greatest invention. Is it perhaps penicillin, which has saved so many countless lives, or the pill, which, through stopping overpopulation, may mean that we can survive after all? No, I think, face it...
Clement Freud, you're challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, she began to think and she hesitated. So, Clement, you have a point. Correct challenge of 42 seconds. The pill... Oh, no. The greatest invention of our age, starting now.
Before one can assess the greatest invention of our age, you have to be fairly careful to work out how many years you have been on this world. Otherwise, you might choose the wheel of a great invention, which, of course...
Peter Jones is challenged.
Deviation. He's talking about the wheel, which is, he admits, belonging to another age.
Yes, but he said depending on how many years you've been here... You
Well, I
might-
know he can't have been here that long.
Feels like it.
The greatest invention of our age, I do think, Peter, does refer to one's own age, no. But I know what Clement Freud means. One talks about an age stretching back hundreds of years.
Oh, I know what he means.
Peter,
He's quite
I think-
articulate. But he is deviating.
No, I think I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, because we're trying to, I think, to talk about our recent age. So you have the subject with 27 seconds left, the greatest invention of our age, starting now.
I think it's probably the radio, invented by an Italian and enabling us all to listen.
Andre Melly has challenged.
No, it isn't possibly. The radio is just sucking up because he wants to keep his job, and we can't have that sort of sycophantic behavior. Now, they have this deviation. It's not true. It's not the greatest invention.
Peter Jones has another point, and I want to keep my job as well. 19 seconds left for the greatest invention of our age, starting now.
Enabling us all to listen on Christmas Day in crofters' cottages and ships at sea,
Clement Freud is
lighthouses.
challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
It's not possible for all of us to get into crofters' cottages.
Well, I was going on to list other places.
You
where
said
it was-
enabling us all.
to listen in crofters' cottages and
Well, that
ships
is
at sea, lighthouses, skyscrapers, and
Of course,
public buildings.
Clement, it is perfectly possible to say that it does enable us all to listen in crofters' cottages. Peter did not say that we all were going to be in a crofters' cottage to listen. So it
well,
would
it sounded
enable
like-
us if we all had crofters' cottages to listen. So, Peter, you have another point, and you have 12 seconds for the greatest invention of our age, starting now.
Ships at sea, skyscrapers, and lighthouses, cottages.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
No.
He's got an awful long way away from radios, which were his.
No, he's saying the radios reach skyscrapers and lighthouses. It's
A
perfectly
long
reasonable.
time. Long time.
Oh,
ago.
I'm mentioning these places because...
Lovely, doing marvellous.
I've got to mention these other places because he said we can't all get into the crofters' cottages. It's all his fault.
I think the fact that he was interrupted so often, he was trying to
Right.
pick up where he broke off before.
Makes it
So-
very difficult to go on.
I know it does.
I know, I just got in my stride which is not easy to do.
You've got 6 seconds. You've had the
seconds,
benefit of the
yes.
doubt more than once. You've got a lot of points, and you have the subject still starting now.
Much better than television.
Hesitation, he didn't
No,
start.
absolutely wrong. 6 seconds, Peter, starting now.
Much better than television because you can't see the people, which often gives you quite an erroneous idea.
Peter Jones was then speaking when the whistle went. In fact, he did most of the speaking in that round, so he gained the extra point, and you will not be surprised to hear that he has he's occupied. Is that the right word? Multiplied by 8, the number of points he had in that round. And Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin. How I affect others. And the audience are very amused by the thought, so will you like to tell us how you affect others in 60 seconds starting now?
Like most people in the world, in various ways. Some fall apart and think it's all too utterly delicious. And others write offensive letters like, why don't you shut your great mouth and learn how to be good-mannered on the programme. I have that sort of thing come in. Most of them, I am here to say, are cowardly enough to put no address on the top of the letter. Otherwise, they'd get a right
Clement.
stinker from me.
Clement Freud has challenged
A
you.
repetition of letter.
I'm afraid you did say letter before.
Well, oh, yeah. Well,
As you were talking about letters, it was difficult not to. You should have gone to epistle or missive or something else.
Yeah.
Clement, you have the subject. 27 seconds starting now.
Unlike Kenneth Williams' correspondence, the epistles that I receive are all in the same vein. What is so pleasing is that everybody dislikes me. I get...
Peter Jones is challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, I think he waited for a round of applause.
No, I want...
You've got the applause now, Clement, I'm sure they don't, but I'm afraid you did pause after
Yes,
that
yes.
thought of how much they all disliked you. So Peter Jones has a point, and there are 13.5 seconds on how I affect others, Peter, starting now.
Well, of course, I don't know very much about this because the majority of people keep it a secret and try not to reveal their true feelings.
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
deviation, he knows a lot about it. He's got bags of fan mail come in, so he's got masses of reaction to go by. It's all lies to say he doesn't know about
No,
his effects
no,
on others.
I'm glad you-
Absolute lies. I know all about it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I'm glad I allowed you to go on, because once you said it was all lies, I know now that your challenge is wrong, because it can't be lies. There must be many, many people. Peter Jones has no idea how he affects them.
Exactly.
So, Peter, you have another point in 4 seconds on how I affect others, starting now.
Out of the 50 million people in this country, more people don't like to me than do.
No, Andre challenged before the whistle.
Half a second. Yeah.
Yes, you got him before the whistle.
Two peoples.
Yes, there were two peoples. You challenged very well, Andre. You have half a second on this subject, starting now.
Sweetness and light.
Andre Melly was almost speaking when the whistle went, and she gets a point for that all the same. And Andre Melly, Clement Freud, Kenneth Williams are all just about equal in second place. Peter Jones is still very definitely in the lead. And Peter, your turn to begin. Questions I never ask. Can you tell us about some of them, starting now?
Have you stopped beating your wife? And is your husband coming back before midnight? In which case, would you like to come and have dinner with me tonight? Can you think of a restaurant which is cheaper than the one we went to last time? These are some of the questions which I wouldn't dream of asking, because I feel the answer might easily land me in worse trouble than I am already. Other people may be of the opinion that if they could be persuaded to make a hazard a guess, shall I?
Clement Freud is challenged.
hesitation.
Yes, I think there was just a hesitation there, Peter. Clement, I agree. You have the subject. You have 26 seconds. Questions I never ask, starting now.
Does your mother take in washing? Has she sold her land? What's become of the old piano your sister used to strangle? Has your father plenty of work? Does he still get booze too?
Andre Melly is
Two
challenged.
does, and I think two has it.
2 does, 2 has, yes. But,
There was only one does.
was there only one does?
Yes.
I'll put it to the audience. You are the final judges. Would you agree with Andre's challenge on does and has, which are small words? If you agree with Andre, cheer. If you think she's wrong, boo. And will you all do it together now?
What?
Somebody wave. What did you... I think the woman who waved was right. It was about equal, wouldn't you say? Just about equal. Does his, has his. I've finished it. No points, nothing awarded. Clement Freud keeps the subject. 14 seconds. Questions I never ask, starting now.
If you were to drive a 31 bus down Piccadilly, would you exact fares from a Boy Scout who got on at Oxford Circus? This is a question which I'd never ask anyone because, frankly, I've never travelled on that...
Well, Clement Freud was then speaking when the whistle went, got the extra point, and I must say to dear Mr. Thought of the Game that I think his subjects are now getting more devious. Right, the next subject is for Clement Freud to begin with. Why I'm seldom wrong. Clement is the subject. You have 60 seconds, starting now.
The only possible answer to the question why I'm seldom wrong has got to be because I'm invariably right. And the reason for this is the wealth of knowledge which I've acquired in what could be called a long life. If you asked me to explain Pythagoras, I would do so readily. Anyone who wishes information about differential calculus has only to come to me. Why am I seldom wrong? Here you have it. Education, erudition, intellect, and a brain power second only to Kenneth Williams, who is about to buzz, but I hope will now refrain from being so beastly as to interrupt this flow of rhetoric, which I have worked upon.
Well, he did work very, very hard. He deserved that round of applause and the extra point for speaking when the whistle went, and I think everybody was straining for him to finish, and nobody wanted to challenge. Well done, Clement. The subject is now for you, Andre, and it is... Oh, I just let you know, by the way, as a result of Clement Freud's flow of rhetoric, he has now gone into the lead alongside Peter Jones at the end of that round. Andre Melly and Kenneth Williams are about halfway behind, together equal in second place. And Andre, it is your turn to begin. The subject is jesters, and would you talk to us about them for 60 seconds, starting now?
These were to be found in the courts long ago. They wore motley, which was a kind of coloured suit, and bells on their hats, and carried a small stick with a face at the top of it. They were supposed to be funny, and were kept housed and fed if they were. If they weren't, when asked to be, they said
Clement Freud is challenged.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, dry up, pack up. There are 35 seconds for Jesters Clement, starting now.
Historically, these were very much the sort of people described by Miss Melly. But nowadays, any comedian, almost anyone appearing on television in a program said to be of a nature close to comedy.
Andre Melly's challenged.
Hesitation.
I think so, indeed. The Jesters...
The same as returning your...
Yeah, thank you.
I think it was drawing you all up. There are 22 seconds for you on Jesters, Andre, starting now.
Shakespeare has many characters who are jesters, Touchstone, Feste, and the fool in Lear was the most interesting of them all, being wise, clever, intelligent, and cynical, as many comedians are when you get to know them personally.
Another hesitation, which you picked up first, Clement. 4 seconds, 4.5 seconds on Jesters, starting now.
A lady I met on a bus the other day said, I do enjoy Just a Minute, and I said, it should be pronounced...
That was a nice thought, which I think deserved the extra point for speaking when the whistle went, Clement. You've now got a lead of 3 over Peter at the end of that round. And Peter, your turn to begin again. Bedsteads. Can you talk to us about those necessary things for 60 seconds, starting now?
They have a race in Cambridge, and people lie on bedsteads and are driven or pushed or otherwise propelled along the main roads of this city
Kenneth Williams got him first.
Hesitation.
Yes, indeed. And so, Kenneth, you take over the subject of bedsteads. 45 seconds, starting now.
Well, of course, the greatest one is Ware, the great bed of Ware, you see.
Peter challenged twice.
No, I only challenged once. I think Andre challenged.
Oh, I see, yes. Well,
What's
your
she
buzzer...
challenging about?
Where? He said where.
The first was W-A-R-E, the second one was W-H-E-R-E.
He was very clever, saying the great...
Yes, it's very repetition.
All I can say is be wary, Kenneth. You might trip yourself up. Right, you have a point for a clever line which foxed them, Kenneth, and you have 39 seconds on bedstead starting now.
And in this aforementioned bedstead, they said as many as 7 could all sleep together. And they also added that the propinquity would be great fun. Well, I never tried anything like it myself, of course, but I have been reliably assured.
Clement Freud has challenged you. Why?
Usual,
What?
of course.
He said, of course,
Yes,
before.
he started the whole
Yes, he did. He
enterprise
started
with
the
of
whole
course.
thing with the course. Do you agree with me, audience? I think you're biased and prejudiced. Thank you for reassuring me that you are. I now know that I was right, and Clement Freud has the point for a correct challenge, and there are 25 seconds left, starting now.
Of course, bedsteads have a
Kenneth
number of...
Williams has challenged
Hesitation, it took ages to start.
It took ages to start because he was trying to think of how to get enough calls so that you would challenge him. He was being very sporting.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
But he did hesitate, and I agree, and he was really trying to help you, Kenneth, because he wants you to talk about the bedsteads. I think, like me, he's fascinated about the propinquity in the bedstead. So it's your turn. Take up your propinquity and carry on with your bedstead. And there are 23 seconds left, starting now.
Handmade ones.
Peter James. Peter, you challenge.
Hesitation.
I agree with Peter's challenge. He gains a point, and 20 seconds for bedsteads starting now, Peter.
Well, I was telling you about this competition.
Kenneth wins the challenge.
Deviation has not told us anything about any competition.
He was telling you about the competition in Cambridge where they push the bedsteads down the main street. Peter, you have another point, and you have 13 seconds for bedsteads starting now.
I'm very fond of brass ones with a lot of curly bits of metal all around each end, and the 4 posters with wood and hung with rich draperies with curtains which pull, giving one privacy and a certain...
I'm sorry to have to tell you we have no more time in this particular game. Peter Jones was then speaking when the whistle went. He gained an extra point. He got a few points in that last game. And he crept up quite a bit on Clement Freud. But just let me give you the final score. Kenneth Williams was in 4th place, only 1 point behind Andre Melly in 2nd place, who was quite a bit behind Peter Jones, who didn't quite get back to beat Clement Freud, who was once again our winner, Clement Freud. We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch. We present Just a Minute with Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones, and deposed chairman Nicholas Parsons. And as our contribution to the women's liberation movement, the chairman is Andre Melly.
Thank you. The object of this game is to speak for just a minute without repetition, hesitation, or deviation. I know it's very difficult because I've tried it, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be lenient. Oh, no. So,
She looked at me when she said that.
keep going, don't repeat yourself, and don't get off the subject. As Nicholas Parsons hasn't had much experience of being on the receiving end of the game, we are going to start with him. Nicholas, can you speak for just a minute on the position I now find myself in?
No.
Starting now.
The position I now find myself in is a very uncomfortable one. I feel like Daniel must have done when he went in amongst the lions. And let me tell you who these lions are. Sitting on my left, I have Peter Jones. I know he washes regularly, and his breath is as pure as gold, and that great aura of wit and charm that he exudes, and is a great companionable chap, and he makes me feel in this position very comfortable. But facing me, I see Kenneth Williams, who goes in great flights of rhetoric, audacity and panache beyond all word, and sometimes the audience love it, and sometimes they cheer, and sometimes they boo. But Clement Freud sitting beside him with his dog-like look, and also those Saturnine features which belie so much that goes on beneath that cranium there, where the wheels of his brain are turning with such speed and alacrity that we wonder... My God!
Nicholas Parsons gets 2 points for speaking for just a minute without interruption.
May I now retire?
You stay right there. There were many repetitions and sometimes that I heard, but everyone was being very nice and well done. Next, Kenneth Williams, can you speak for just a minute on women in authority? Starting now.
They're a disgrace, and moreover, they use their position and their dirty feminine wiles, and thus result in disorganisation, and she's gone off. She's left. Come back here.
I've challenged.
Yes, Nicholas Parsons challenged.
A deviation, because the chairwoman left the platform. It's dried up Kenneth Williams, and so he hesitated as well.
Well, I didn't hear him hesitate. It was very kind of you to support me.
I didn't, you fell.
But I don't really accept the challenge. Kenneth gets a point, and he keeps the subject. There are 49 seconds. Women in authority, starting now.
Women in authority are always better if they're replaced by men. Only then can you have a proper kind of impartiality and an objectivity, because men do not bring anything...
Clement Freud, you challenged.
Repetition of men.
Yes, there was. That's a point to Clement. There are 35 seconds. You have the subject women in authority starting now.
I am very much in favour of women in authority. Not only are women the best other sex that we have, but authority...
Kenneth, you challenged.
Deviation. It's ridiculous to say they're the best other sex we have. They're the only other sex we have.
I'm afraid, although he was being lovely about us women, I have to agree with Kenneth. He gets a point and the subject, women in authority, with 26 seconds starting now.
You can see the result of women in authority when you read those feminine sections of these daft magazines where they're all advising these idiots who write in about their acne, and they say, oh, it'll be all right, love, shove a load of pancake over it and you'll never notice. What a load of rubbish. And indeed, this goes on every single week. Heartbroken Berkhamsted. Have you ever heard anything like it? And they write to these women who are posting...
Clement, you challenged.
Right. Repetition of...
No, the first one was R-I-G-H-T and the other one was W-R.
I think Clement was right. And anyway, he was being so nice about his own, Kenneth's being so horrible, and I can say which is right and which is wrong. So Clement gets the subject, he gets a point, he's got 1 second for women in authority starting now.
Lovely.
Clement is in the lead at the end of that round. Kenneth is just behind him, Nicholas behind him, and Peter, we haven't started to score yet. We haven't heard from you at all.
Well, you can't be in front. We're all behind.
It's now Clement's turn. The subject is women in trousers. Can you speak for 60 seconds on women in trousers, starting now?
The most important thing about women in trousers is to ascertain whose trousers the women are in. And if you should find that she is wearing a pair of her own, you're in a very much better condition than should she be dressed in someone else's apparel. I once met a woman who was wearing Nelson's trousers. And as this...
But Nicholas, you challenge.
Nelson wore breeches, not trousers. Deviation.
Oh, yes, I think that's quite clever. I think that's all right. You get a point, you get the subject.
I don't want it.
There are 36 seconds for women in trousers starting now.
Women in trousers, what does it mean? I say to you all sitting out there in this audience, this could be the beginning of the end if you didn't see the end of the trousers. Now...
Clement buzzed first. You challenged?
Repetition of end.
Yes, I heard 2 ends. It was the end.
Well, I was talking about the Nicholas, you see.
I accept his challenge. He gets a point. He gets the subject women in trousers. There are 28 seconds starting now.
There's still a number of London restaurants who maintain...
Peter, you challenge.
A deviation. Talking about restaurants, his favourite subject. Nothing to do with women in trousers.
Well, as we haven't heard from you for a long time, Peter, I'm going to give you the subject and a point. There are 25 seconds for women in trousers starting now.
They can get about and be very nimble when they're wearing these skirts, I do feel.
Kenneth, you challenge.
Deviation, whether in trousers or not, there's nothing to do with that. They can get about in skirts. I mean, that's so totally irrelevant. It's deviation.
No, I have the experience of being in trousers and skirts, and you're much nimbler in a pair of pants. So Peter keeps the subject. There are 20 seconds. He gets a point. The subject's women in trousers starting now.
And it's quite useful if they're going up ladders or coming down stairs, riding horseback, or jumping up and down on weighing machines. A variety of activities.
Nicholas, you challenge.
Well, that is definitely, in my mind, Davis, if you jump up and down on a weighing machine, you will break it. And no woman would want to jump on a weighing machine because it would go down further and her weight would be higher. Her feminine vanity wouldn't let her jump. She would step nimbly onto it.
But once broken, it's silenced and can no longer tell her the truth.
Yes, I jump up and down always on weighing machines because you think it's going to get a bit less. I'm afraid I am with Peter on this. He keeps the subject. He gets another point. There are 10 seconds for women in trousers.
I can think of no one I would...
Now.
I can think of no one I would rather
Kenneth,
be with.
Deviation, he's deliberately going slow in order to win this round.
I think he was going about as slow as you do, so he's probably just sort of realizing that's the way to carry on. He keeps the subject. He gets another point. There are 7 seconds. Women in trousers starting now.
Anyway, hot pants are still included.
Nicholas.
Hot pants aren't trousers.
No, they're not. You're quite right. You get a point. There are 4 seconds. Women in trousers starting now.
Well, women in trousers.
Clement, challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, I'm afraid that is quite definite.
Oh, dog-like face, a smile, too, and his cheekiness.
No, I think they're just ganging up over there.
Yes.
I'm going to let you keep the subject, Nicholas. I'm going to
Thank
give
you.
you a point. I'm
I'll
going to
remember
help
this,
you
Andre,
along.
if
That's
I-
right.
can you
There
come-
are 3 seconds. Women in trousers starting now.
Some of them look charming as they walk along.
Nicholas Parsons gets a point for speaking when the whistle went, and I don't believe it. He's in the lead. Oh, rubbish. He's in the lead. Well, that's the end of all of that. You watch it next round. Clement and Peter
prejudiced.
behind, and Kenneth trailing, as Nicholas used to say. It's now Peter's turn. The subject is gentlemen prefer blondes. Can you speak for just 60 seconds on gentlemen prefer blondes starting now?
Well, of course, I don't really believe it. In any case, it's a dreary old cliché which only serves to confirm the male attitude to women, which is basically that they are things or objects, sexual or otherwise. And
Kenneth, you challenge.
Disgusting. There's no need. Sit here listening to a load of filth. Must be found entertainment. Anything about sexuality on the air. I don't want to sit here and listen to a load of filth. That's
Right.
deviation.
Yes.
Deviation.
Deviation.
Definite deviation.
Otherwise was definitely deviation.
Yes. No, we can't have words like sexual. Words
No,
like that,
certainly
because-
not.
No,
Sexual,
right.
all right, but
Deviation.
otherwise.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kenneth gets the subject.
Yeah.
well, I've got my image.
Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth.
I don't see why I should
Hush up, the lot of you.
be hamstrung.
I haven't said a word.
There are 41 seconds for Kenneth Williams to tell us why gentlemen prefer blondes, starting now.
Gentlemen prefer blondes because there was this show, you see, of that name in which this girl come on and sang this number really lovely, and it swept London. Everyone was going around believing that this title was indeed more than just the name of a show, but it was...
Everyone buzzed and Clement did it first.
A repetition of show.
Yes, there were 2 shows, I'm afraid. Clement, you get a point. You get the subject. Gentlemen prefer blondes. 26 seconds starting now.
This was originally a book written by a lady called Anita Luce, spelled L-2-O-S. Many people didn't...
Peter, you challenge.
Repetition of O.
No, he said 2 O's. He
Well,
didn't
spelled
say
it
O.
out. Spelled it out. Well, it's 2
No,
O's.
no,
I mean,
no.
the O was repeated.
I think he said 2 O's. That's not saying O-O. He keeps the subject. He gets a point. It's Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, the 19 seconds, starting now.
The volume was a bestseller and was later made into a play and then a musical, and it purported to show that the majority of the male sex...
Peter, you challenge.
A repetition of show. Purported to show, he said, and
Yeah,
it was
he
a
said
show
in the
earlier
bit
on,
before.
he said.
It's
not
that
I,
counts,
he.
doesn't it?
Oh, yes, you said it.
Yeah, you said it the time before the challenge, so I suppose you're right. It's repetition.
What do you mean, suppose I'm right?
Peter, you get the subject. Gentlemen prefer blondes. There's... What? Oh, the 10 seconds starting now.
You never hear this about men. You never see advertisements, I am looking for an attractive garage mechanic, whereas you do see the same things.
Oh, my goodness. Peter, Nicholas, and Clement are all equal, and Kenneth is equally behind. So, we go into the next round. Nicholas, it's your subject.
Oh, God.
Can you speak for 60 seconds on the subject Parsons? Starting now.
Parsons is, of course, my family name. I was given it because my father married my mother, and from that wedlock I arrived. It is, of course, clergyman as well, and...
Clement, you challenge.
Deviation. You don't arrive from wedlock.
How do you know how I
Pretty
came into the
ingenuous on this program. But it isn't wedlock that causes children to arrive.
Actually, I think Clement is pedantically correct, I'm afraid, and he gets the subject and a point. There are 50 seconds for Parsons, starting now.
Parsons are generically clergymen of any church, but specifically that of England, and they walk the paths and roads and rolling lanes, spreading goodwill and baptizing people who get in their way.
Nicholas, you challenge.
No, you don't baptize people who get in your way. You wait till they bring you to church and ask the clergyman to baptize your child. And if he was pedantic before, I'm going to
Yes,
get a
you
bit
be
of pedanticism in
pedantic. You be pedantic, and you get the subject, and you get a point, and there's 33 seconds for Parsons, starting now.
A lot of people think that if you have the name Parsons, it must mean that all your ancestors were clergymen way back. And if you say to me, how is this knowledge mine, I will say Parsons knows. But, of course, it is also in the nose the first
Peter.
Repetition of also.
Oh, no, you're not allowed also.
rotten
What
challenge.
do you mean you're not allowed also?
Well, it's too little, isn't it?
Is it?
Yes, right. Nicholas, you keep the subject. There, and you get a point, and there's 15
Two
seconds
syllables.
for Parsons, starting now.
Of course, another thing is I don't know what to say
Clement
about this
Freud.
subject either.
It's the fourth, of course.
Yes, I agree. I accept Clement's challenge. He gets a point. It was the 4th or 5th, of course, and of course he gets the subject, which is Parsons, with 9 seconds starting now.
When you get a flock of these ecclesiastical gentlemen massing around the font, it is probably time to warm the water.
Clement Freud was speaking when the whistle went, so he gets an extra point, and at the moment is in a fairly decisive lead with Nicholas just behind, Peter just behind him, and Kenneth trailing. It is now Kenneth's turn. Can you speak for just a minute on Dr. Spooner, starting now?
Well, of course, he was a member of the faculty of Oxford University and did become famous for a mispronunciation of certain words and expressions. One of the most famous was, of course, the kinkering kongs instead of the conquering kings. And on another occasion, he was supposed to have said to an undergraduate, "You have tasted 2 worms." Well, because he meant he wasted 2 terms. And he said, you can take the town drain to Oxford, you see, when he meant the down train, you see. It was things like that which made him very famous. He's gone into legend, of course, and one of the loveliest stories...
Nicholas,
Oh, shut up, I've never taken notice of him. One of the loveliest stories of all is this gentleman who's come back from...
Can you just hold your stream
I
a
did
moment?
actually count 4, of courses.
I'm afraid that Nicholas gets the subject. He gets a point. He gets the subject. He won't want it. He'll give it you back in a minute. Dr. Spooner with 21 seconds starting now.
The Dr. Spooner I knew was a most engaging character, and he got this name because one day he took some celebrated people out to a huge restaurant, and there at this table, this huge dowager lady carrying all
Clement,
before
are
her
you
in a
challenged?
low-cut dress.
Repetition of huge.
Yes, the word too huge.
It's a super story.
You get the subject. Dr. Spooner with 10 seconds starting now.
I had a general practitioner whose name really was Dr. Spooner, and his speciality was pediatrics. He treated children the way other people treat mice.
Once more, Clement Freud was talking when the whistle went, so he gets an extra point. And he and Nicholas are now neck and neck, with Peter just behind and Kenneth a little behind him. Clement Freud, it's now your turn. Can you speak for 60 seconds on how I feel about it all, starting now?
I usually begin by taking off the shirt, then the trousers and underpants. Thereafter, warming my hands, I feel about to see what sort of things I might come into contact with. Here a muscle, there a gland.
Nicholas, you
Hesitation.
I was absolutely riveted.
So was
I know you weren't concentrating, I see it in her face, but he was a wasn't it a hesitation audience?
No, I really
Well,
don't.
put it to them.
No.
You weren't listening, you've admitted it.
I was listening and I was riveted, and I would have been unriveted by a hesitation.
Yes.
So Clement, I think, keeps the subject and gets a point and has 39 seconds for how I feel about it all, starting now.
There's another way you could construe this subject, which is on a sort of, what you might call...
Nicholas.
Hesitation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a so you do get the subject that time. 32 seconds. How I feel about it all, starting now.
How I feel about it all is with my hands. This is a very attractive game. First of all, you are blindfolded, and then an object is pushed towards you, which you grip. And the one occasion when I had it, it was, of course, a wet sponge, and all the water seeped out onto the carpet. It ran in rivulets across the floor, and the children came down to run their boats in it.
Clement, challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
You can't have rivulets in a carpet.
You haven't seen our carpet.
Not rivulets.
You can't actually...
Little rivulets of water.
No, you have sort of awful, mushy, muggy, sploshy puddles.
Not if you live on a slope.
You have a cascade. You don't have rivulets.
No, because there was
I'm
only a sponge
afraid
downstairs.
I agree. You can't have a rivulet on a carpet. And Clement Freud gets a point.
It's on the card.
Oh, isn't it lovely? Clement,
Women in trousers.
you have the subject, you have a point. How I feel about it all. 14 seconds starting now.
Many people think that all is politics, and how I feel about it all is the Liberal Party is really due for a sensational, fantastic, and heartwarming revival.
Nicholas challenged, but Ian Mester said it was a second too late, and Clement gets a point for speaking when the whistle went, and he has leapt into a decisive lead with Nicholas still, well, not all that far behind, Peter behind him, and Kenneth.
Oh,
Where
don't keep
are
rubbing
you?
it in, then.
What's happening?
Honestly, rivulets of
Not the
lead.
subject. I can't think of anything to say about
Oh.
it. What's the next one?
Now, dear Peter, it's Peter's subject.
No,
you get
we'll be
it
in.
quickly. Come on. Tea with Auntie. 60 seconds starting now.
Well, practically all my elderly aunts have passed on, and gone somewhere else. But the BBC...
Kenneth challenge.
Hesitation, yeah.
Oh, yes, of course.
Well, it was just a respect. No, you said earlier. Deceased relative. I should really have given 2 minutes silence.
He gets the subject. He's got 51 seconds to keep going. Tea with Auntie starting now.
Well, I went to tea with Auntie and she was lying there in the bed and she said, I can't get up, she said, because I've got my lock tip cup on again. I said, oh, I am sorry to hear that. So she said she wanted to have these cakes. They were very nice. They were those hot toasted tea cakes and we put them on this primer stove because that's all the eating she had, poor thing. I said to her, I wonder how you manage. She said, well, with these blankets over me.
Nicholas challenged again.
It's now 8, I said, and she said.
I want to know what's going to happen. No, I want to know what he's on about. Kenneth, you keep going and get another point. You've got 25 seconds and you start now.
So I had one of these and the butter ran down all my mouth. I felt awful. And I said, have you got anything I could wipe it on? And she said, use the blanket. Well, I did.
Peter challenged.
Repetition of blanket.
Oh,
He mentioned
You're a
blanket.
wet blanket, you are. You
Mentioned blanket.
yes, I think I'm afraid you did.
And there were 10 says as well, I
Yeah,
counted them.
Right. So Peter gets a point. He gets the subject. Tea with Auntie. 15 seconds starting now.
Think of Auntie as being the BBC, because that is the lovable euphemism.
Kenneth, you challenge.
Deviation. Auntie's not the BBC. You don't have tea with the BBC. What a load of rubbish. You can sit down and have tea with the BBC.
I seem to have touched a very sensitive nerve. What's the matter with him?
I agree with you, Peter.
You do?
David Hatch said to me, come and have tea with Auntie.
Exactly.
And I judge it that.
Yes, I think he does.
Yes,
he gets
thank
it back.
you.
I want to know what
I get a point.
The BBC is referred to as Auntie.
Proverbially, Auntie's BBC.
I get a point. Do I get a point there?
Yes, he gets a point.
Good, yes.
He gets the
How many
subject. Tea with
subjects?
Auntie. He's only got 10 seconds to go, and he's starting now.
Yes, well, she was called Sally. Oh, it's a disgrace.
Nicholas challenge.
She said again, it's 11 says now.
I am not going to award a point against him for saying said. He can say it as many times as he likes, because I think it's one of those little words like does. So, he keeps the subject. He gets another point. He's got 9 seconds. Tea with Auntie starting now.
And then she said, what about some of these nice pancakes, you see? The honey dripping all over him. I said, well, I will get fat. I'll be quite
Nicholas.
obese.
Now, this one is a legitimate one. The butter dripped before, and now the honey is dripping.
He did. He's quite right.
Yes. I
He
have
gets
to...
a point. He gets the subject. Tea with Auntie. He's got half a second starting now.
Auntie's a lovely woman.
Clement is still in the lead. Nicholas is 1 point behind him. Kenneth's in 3rd place. And Peter's just a tiny bit behind. And that was the last subject. What was the last subject? That was the last subject. And, oh no, I've done all that. Right. Unfortunately, this is the last of the present series. So, it's goodbye from me, Andre Melly, Clement Freud,
Goodbye from me, Clement Freud.
Kenneth Williams,
Bye.
Peter
Bye-bye
Jones,
From me, yes, bye-bye.
and Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. As the ex-chairman of this programme who hopes to return, and we hope the programme will return, and we hope that you'll be listening when it does return, and we do hope that you've enjoyed this particular edition, the last in this present series of Just a Minute. Till we all meet again, goodbye.
You've been listening to Just a Minute. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.